Vladimir Ilyich Lenin stands as one of the most consequential political figures of the 20th century, a revolutionary leader whose ideas and actions fundamentally reshaped world history. Born Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, he adopted the pseudonym Lenin and led the Bolshevik Revolution that overthrew the Russian provisional government, established the world's first communist state, and inspired revolutionary movements across the globe. His life represents the transformation of radical theory into political reality, with consequences that extended far beyond Russia's borders. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov was born on April 22, 1870, in Simbirsk, later renamed Ulyanovsk in his honor, a provincial town on the Volga River. His family belonged to the educated middle class of Imperial Russia. His father, Ilya Nikolaevich Ulyanov, was a school inspector and education administrator who achieved noble status through his service, while his mother, Maria Alexandrovna Blank, came from a family of mixed German, Jewish, and Russian ancestry. The Ulyanov household emphasized education, discipline, and intellectual development. Lenin was the third of 6 children, and the family environment fostered serious discussion of social and political issues. His father's work in expanding public education exposed young Vladimir to the contradictions between progressive ideals and autocratic governance that characterized late Imperial Russia. The trajectory of Lenin's life changed dramatically when he was 16. In 1887, his beloved older brother Alexander was arrested, tried, and executed for participating in a plot to assassinate Tsar Alexander III. The execution of Alexander, a student at St. Petersburg University who had been radicalized by the revolutionary movement, profoundly impacted the entire family. For Vladimir, it represented both a personal tragedy and a political awakening that would shape his future path. Following his brother's execution, Lenin completed his secondary education with a gold medal despite the family's disgrace. Lenin entered Kazan University in August 1887, but was expelled within months for participating in student protests against university regulations and the broader autocratic system. This expulsion marked the beginning of his serious engagement with revolutionary politics and Marxist theory. During his enforced absence from formal education, Lenin immersed himself in radical literature, particularly the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. He joined illegal revolutionary study groups and began developing his understanding of Marxist theory as applied to Russian conditions. The family had moved to the village of Alekayevka, where Lenin spent time reading, thinking, and formulating his political views. In 1890, Lenin was permitted to take his law examinations externally at St. Petersburg University. He completed his law degree in just 1 year, graduating first in his class despite having been largely self-taught. This achievement demonstrated his intellectual capabilities and disciplined approach to learning, qualities that would serve him throughout his revolutionary career. After briefly practicing law in Samara, Lenin moved to St. Petersburg in 1893, joining Marxist circles and writing his first political works, including critiques of populist ideology. Lenin's early writings established him as a serious Marxist theorist who could adapt revolutionary theory to Russian conditions. He argued against populist beliefs that Russia could bypass capitalist development, contending instead that the industrial proletariat would be the agent of revolutionary change. In 1895, Lenin helped establish the Union for the Liberation of the Working Class, one of the precursors to the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party. His organizational activities led to his arrest and imprisonment in December 1895. During his 14 months in prison, he continued his theoretical work and began writing The Development of Capitalism in Russia, a comprehensive analysis of Russian economic conditions. Following his release from prison, Lenin was sentenced to 3 years of exile in Siberia. In 1898, he married Nadezhda Krupskaya, a fellow revolutionary who had also been sentenced to exile. Their partnership would prove crucial to Lenin's revolutionary work, as Krupskaya became his closest collaborator, secretary, and political advisor. The Siberian exile period allowed Lenin to complete major theoretical works and develop his ideas about revolutionary organization. Upon completion of his exile in 1900, he left Russia for Western Europe, beginning a 17-year period of emigration that would see him become the leader of the Bolshevik faction of Russian social democracy. In 1902, Lenin published What is to be Done, arguably his most influential theoretical work. The pamphlet outlined his vision of a revolutionary party, composed of professional revolutionaries who would lead the working class to power. This concept of a disciplined, centralized party organization differed significantly from other socialist approaches and would become a defining characteristic of Bolshevism. The 1903 Congress of the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party in London witnessed the historic split between Lenin's Bolsheviks, majority, and the Mensheviks, minority, led by Julius Martov. The division centered on questions of party organization, with Lenin advocating for a more centralized, disciplined approach, while the Mensheviks favored a broader, more inclusive membership policy. During the 1905 Russian Revolution, Lenin returned briefly to Russia, but was forced to flee again as the revolutionary wave subsided. The years between 1907 and 1917 were difficult for Lenin and the revolutionary movement. Living in exile in various European cities, he struggled to maintain party unity and revolutionary momentum. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 created new opportunities and challenges, as Lenin developed his theory of imperialism and argued that the war represented the final crisis of capitalism. Lenin's opposition to the war was uncompromising. While most European socialist parties supported their government's war efforts, Lenin maintained that socialists should work for the defeat of their own governments and transform the imperialist war into a civil war against capitalism. This position initially isolated him, but proved prescient as the war's devastation created revolutionary conditions. The February Revolution of 1917 that overthrew Tsar Nicholas II found Lenin in Switzerland, desperate to return to Russia. The German government, hoping to destabilize their Russian enemies, provided Lenin and other revolutionaries with safe passage through Germany in the famous sealed train. Lenin's arrival at Petrograd's Finland station on April 16, 1917, marked a turning point in the Russian Revolution. His April Theses, presented immediately upon his return, shocked even his own Bolshevik colleagues. Lenin argued that the party should not support the provisional government, but should instead work toward a second revolution that would bring the Bolsheviks to power under the slogan, "Peace, Land, Bread." Throughout the summer and fall of 1917, Lenin worked tirelessly to prepare for the seizure of power. He faced significant opposition within his own party, many of whom considered his plans premature and dangerous. However, Lenin's analysis of the revolutionary situation proved correct, as the provisional government's decision to continue the war and delay land reform created growing popular discontent. In his pamphlet, The State and Revolution, written while in hiding during the summer of 1917, Lenin outlined his vision of the post-revolutionary state. Drawing on Marx's analysis of the Paris Commune, he argued for the destruction of the existing state apparatus and its replacement with a new form of democratic organization based on workers' councils, Soviets. The October Revolution of 1917, November 7th to 8th by the Western calendar, represented the culmination of Lenin's revolutionary strategy. Leading the Bolsheviks in the seizure of key points in Petrograd, Lenin and his followers overthrew the provisional government with relatively little bloodshed. The success of the October Revolution established Lenin as the leader of the world's first socialist state. Lenin's assumption of power as chairman of the Council of People's Commissars marked the beginning of the most challenging phase of his career. The theoretical revolutionary now faced the practical problems of governing a vast country amid world war, economic collapse, and internal opposition. The early months of Bolshevik rule were marked by radical measures intended to fulfill revolutionary promises. Lenin's government immediately sued for peace with Germany, resulting in the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk in March 1918, which cost Russia significant territory but allowed the Bolsheviks to consolidate power. Land was redistributed to peasants, and workers' control was established in factories. However, these early measures could not prevent the outbreak of the Russian Civil War in 1918. Lenin found himself leading a besieged government, fighting against White Army forces, foreign intervention, and internal opposition. The demands of civil war led to increasingly authoritarian measures, including the establishment of the Cheka, secret police, and the implementation of war communism, a system of economic controls that virtually eliminated market mechanisms. Lenin's leadership during the Civil War demonstrated both his strategic capabilities and his willingness to use ruthless methods to maintain power. The Red Army, organized by Leon Trotsky under Lenin's direction, ultimately prevailed against the White forces, but at enormous cost in human life and economic destruction. The end of the Civil War in 1920 brought new challenges. The policies of war communism had devastated the economy, and popular discontent was growing, culminating in events like the Kronstadt Rebellion of 1921. Lenin recognized the need for tactical retreat and implemented the new economic policy, NEP, which reintroduced market mechanisms while maintaining state control of major industries. The NEP represented Lenin's pragmatic approach to the challenges of building socialism in a backward country. While some party members viewed it as a betrayal of socialist principles, Lenin argued that it was a necessary temporary measure that would allow the Soviet Union to develop the economic foundations necessary for true socialism. During this period, Lenin also grappled with creating a multinational socialist state. The formation of the Soviet Union in 1922 reflected his approach to the national question, balancing centralized control with formal recognition of national autonomy. Lenin's health began to decline seriously in 1922 when he suffered his first stroke. Despite periods of recovery, his condition deteriorated steadily, limiting his active participation in government. During his illness, he became increasingly concerned about the direction of the party and state, particularly regarding the growing power of Joseph Stalin and the bureaucratization of the revolutionary government. Lenin's testament, dictated during his final illness, revealed his concerns about leading party figures and his particular warnings about Stalin's accumulation of power. He recommended Stalin's removal from the position of General Secretary, fearing that Stalin's ruthless methods and personal ambition posed a threat to the revolution's ideals. The conflict over succession and policy direction intensified during Lenin's final months. He supported Trotsky's positions on several key issues and expressed growing alarm about the development of a privileged bureaucratic class within the party and state apparatus. However, his physical condition prevented him from actively intervening in these crucial debates. Vladimir Lenin died on January 21, 1924, at the age of 53, following a series of strokes. His death marked the end of the revolutionary period and the beginning of a struggle for succession that would ultimately bring Stalin to power. Despite Lenin's warnings about Stalin in his testament, the document was suppressed, and Stalin successfully maneuvered to become Lenin's successor. Lenin's historical significance extends far beyond his role in the Russian Revolution. His adaptation of Marxist theory to the conditions of early 20th century imperialism influenced revolutionary movements worldwide, from China and Vietnam to Cuba and beyond. The Bolshevik model of revolutionary organization became a template for communist parties globally. The Soviet state that Lenin established survived for nearly 7 decades and emerged as a global superpower, fundamentally shaping the course of the 20th century. The Cold War, decolonization movements, and the development of the modern welfare state all bore the influence of Lenin's revolutionary legacy. However, Lenin's legacy remains deeply controversial. While supporters credit him with bringing about the world's first successful socialist revolution and inspiring movements for social justice worldwide, critics argue that his methods laid the groundwork for the totalitarian system that emerged under Stalin. The violence, authoritarianism, and human costs associated with the Russian Revolution and Civil War continue to shape debates about Lenin's historical role. Lenin's theoretical contributions to Marxism, particularly his analysis of imperialism and revolutionary organization, continue to influence academic and political discourse. His writings remain studied by scholars, political activists, and students of revolutionary theory. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 prompted renewed assessment of Lenin's legacy, with debates about whether this validated criticisms of his methods and goals, or whether the Soviet system had departed significantly from Lenin's original vision. Contemporary Russia's complex relationship with its revolutionary past reflects these ongoing debates about Lenin's historical significance. Lenin's life story represents one of the most dramatic examples of the power of ideas to transform reality. From a middle-class provincial upbringing through years of revolutionary struggle to leadership of a world-changing revolution, his biography illustrates the potential for individuals to shape history through dedication to their beliefs and strategic thinking about political change. Whether viewed as a liberator or dictator, Lenin remains one of the most influential figures of the modern era, whose actions continue to reverberate in contemporary global politics and social movements. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more engaging historical content.